Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
We'll get started right after this message.
If you want to learn how to experience the best, most fulfilling year of your marriage, we invite you to order Matthew's new book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. You can get it at Amazon.com or visit Matthew's website, www.matthewphoffman.com. Again, that's Amazon.com or www.matthewphoffman.com. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Kickass Couples Podcast. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Rory and AJ Vaden. This power couple defines what it means to mix business with pleasure and make it all work. Rory and AJ are co-founders of Brand Builders Group, one of the world's leading authorities in personal brand strategy. They also co-host the influential Personal Brand Podcast, which was named Forbes' Top 10 Podcast to listen to in 2021. Rory is also known for his New York Times best-selling books, Take the Stairs and Procrastinate on Purpose. He is a leading expert in the psychology of beating procrastination, building a reputation, and creating a successful personal brand. He has also been featured around the globe as a leadership speaker by companies such as Forbes, Fortune, CNN, and the New York Times. Rory and AJ have 2 young children together, multiple successful business ventures, and truly define what it means to be a kick-ass couple. You've heard the old adage, never mix family and business, although these two prove that wrong. Stay tuned to hear how these life and business partners have created a lasting love that can withstand anything. We are so excited to have you with us today on the Kick-Ass Couples Podcast. AJ and Rory Vaden. AJ is the CEO of Brand Builders Group, where they help people become mission-driven messengers, and they learn how to turn their reputation into revenue. Rory Vaden is a New York Times best-selling author of Take the Stairs, Procrastinate on Purpose. He is an international speaker, and they're both podcast hosts also, so this is old hat being on a podcast. And we're just so excited to have you guys with us. And before we jump into it, how long have the two of you all been married?
Ooh, we just celebrated 11 years.
Wow.
Just not even 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. How did you guys celebrate?
Years.
What did you guys celebrate? How did you have fun on that?
Oh, man. We had big plans. They got kiboshed because of all things COVID.
COVID kibosh.
It was a COVID kibosh. But we tried to pull something out and did a one-night staycation at a hotel in Nashville. And that too also kind of got kiboshed. But we tried really hard. We're going to make it up. But we did do 2 really fun things. We went to go see a John Legend concert that was outdoors at an amphitheater, and that was awesome. And we also took ourselves to our very first ever soccer game. And it was awesome. We don't know anything about the sport, but we went.
But there was a brawl.
There was a brawl. Awesome. You weren't part of it, were you? You didn't start that, Roy, did you? Good.
No,
good.
Just wrestling with our toddlers in the stands, which is kind of the same thing. But other than that, we were the Nashville Soccer Club. We were there.
That sounds like fun. Well, you got to celebrate, right, and take opportunities. And so the first question we ask everybody, and a lot of the questions are going to be, we would love to hear from both of you. So either one of you can go first, but we both want to know, what is it that makes the two of you a kick-ass couple?
AJ goes first always.
I was going to be so courteous and let you go first. I will go first. I typically dominate the conversation, so I have to watch myself typically. I think what makes us a kick-ass couple is the fact that in our personal lives, we don't really have anything to argue about. Like, one of the things that we did before we ever got married is we both committed to entering our marriage debt-free. And so we didn't bring any financial baggage into the marriage. We've never had one argument about money in our entire 14-year relationship.
Wow.
I think that a lot of that was just making some really core decisions, but on the front end. But I think the other thing in our personal life is that we actually like all the same stuff. It's I kind of have like a built-in best girlfriend along with my husband, because he likes to do all things girl. Like, he likes to go to the spa and get his nails done and just lay around at the beach and the pool, and he likes to be pampered. So I think one of the things is that we are genuinely actually friends. We actually enjoy the same things, and equally, I probably like sports more than he does. But we really do both things on both sides. Like, it's sports or it's manicures, but we both do them together. And I think a lot of that is having the financial freedom to do things that we enjoy. And then I think it's just awesome that we actually get to enjoy the same things.
Sure.
So what I'm hearing you say is you have a girlfriend and a husband all in one. I love it.
Awesome. It's so great.
Man, you're making me look bad, Roy. The other day, my wife looked at me and she goes, I need a wife. I need a wife. I'm like, well, I can't help you on that, sweetheart. I'm sorry, but oh gosh, but I know what you mean, AJ and Rory. You're making me look bad. I like some of the finer things too, but I think I probably drag her to more stuff than she drags me to. Well, how about you, Rory? What do you think makes you guys a kick-ass couple?
I mean, I think that's a big part of it. We have a lot. I would say we have a lot of shared things in terms of interests. I would say also we have shared values. Like, we come from the same place spiritually. We see a lot of we hold values like integrity and things like that. That it's an uncompromising thing for both of us. And sometimes we will end up doing things that are an inconvenience to one or both of us or the family because one of us told someone we would do it, right? And so I think we have a lot of shared values and a lot of shared interests. But then I would add to that, I think we have complementary skill sets. I think we have some of the same skill sets, but very often complementary. AJ is good at everything. So that is,
I'm just waiting for Rory to say that the way we complement each other is he makes the messes and I clean up the messes.
Can't relate to that at all, Rory.
Life.
That doesn't happen here. Never. No way.
That's a good description of it. But I think, I tend to be off big picture in the la la land, dreaming about the future. And AJ just has this superpower ability to, connect these like wild dreams and then organize them, assimilate them, build the team, manage them, create the systems and the structure and the processes to make it a reality. But that's not to say she's not a visionary. She's also very much a visionary. And I think one of the things that is really cool now is, she's our CEO of Brand Builders Group. And I tell her all the time, I think she was born to be a CEO. She has the rare ability to operate in both the distant future, which you can't see, and then the fires of the immediate present that are right in front of your face that have to be dealt, and bridging those gaps. And so I think we have a lot of complementary skill sets.
That's great. That's a terrific definition. I think definitely affirms what we know to believe about the two of you being kick-ass.
Yeah. He's just trying to say I was born bossy from the get-go.
I wasn't gonna say this, but since you brought it up, there is that phrase. This, I'm not talking about my wife, but I once heard a woman who had a daughter named Amanda, and as she grew up, they used to call her Demanda. Because she was demanding of people and but not bossy.
Well, before we move a little forward with your relationship, I want to go backward a little bit. What I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about your families of origin,
because I believe that we are really a product of the people who raised us, and that influence, we bring a lot of those things from our past and from our families of origin to our relationships. In some cases, it's great, and we've had a wonderful childhood. In some cases, there's been challenges, and at other times, there's been trauma. And so I'm just curious, what did love, AJ, look like in your family when you were growing up?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I was really fortunate growing up that I didn't know anyone who had ever been divorced. No one in my family, on my dad's side, on my mom's side, even friends' parents, up until probably post high school. Like, divorce was just not a thing that I was accustomed to dealing with, like so many families are today that I I'm friends with. And so I was really fortunate to have a mom and a dad who fell in love in college, got married, and who were very, very much in love all the way until my mom passed. My mom died when I was young. I was 15. And so it's like I had this really awesome 15 years of seeing love. But here's what I would also say. It's like they were loving and committed, and it's like they were there for each other. They were in business together. So I come from this is third generation of entrepreneurs in my dad's side of the family. So my mom and dad were in the business together. But I learned just as much about what I did and not want in a relationship from my parents as much as I did. And they were a good, healthy, solid, loving marriage. And we had a great family and just all the connected parts. But I also realized really young in our marriage, it's like, I don't recall my mom and dad ever going on date nights. And ever. I don't recall them ever taking a vacation without us kids. I don't recall them ever doing anything without us. And as we started dating and then got engaged and got married and then had kids, and I'm like, good heavens, how did they survive without alone time? And I think that was one of the things as I reflect back on that hindsight 2020 is going, man, they really didn't have a lot of time just together. It was an awesome family unit, but surely there was lots of things missing in the marriage because there was just no alone time. And so I never saw those things. I just thought this is what you do as a family. It's like everyone's together all the time. And so it's been a really big learning curve for me to really go, no, like the marriage comes first, the kids come second. And I think a lot of that stems from, a happy marriage equals a happy family, not a happy wife, not happy kids, not a happy husband. A happy marriage equals a happy family. And we had a happy family, but I never saw my parents do anything together outside of the kids. So even though it was really healthy and happy, I also take a step back now and go, wow, where was their aloneness? Right. Where was their couple time?
So you didn't see them create opportunities for intimacy for just the two of them, which is so important. Or play, right? We need to play together and have fun together. How about you, Rory? What was it like in your household when you were growing up? How was love expressed?
Yeah, it's interesting because I, in many ways, would describe on the surface, I think I would think of me and AJ as having very different, like radically different upbringings. She was raised, by this married couple. They were entrepreneurs. They were, not the richest family, but they were a wealthy, well-to-do family. She stayed in one city pretty much the whole time up until high school. She's known friends her whole life. My upbringing, I was raised by a single mom who'd been divorced twice by the time she was 22 years old. I never knew my father. I never saw my mom have a healthy relationship until I was about 9 years old to a man I introduced her to. And they ended up getting married, and they've been married for 25 years ever since. But we grew up without a lot of money. I mean, we grew up very, never homeless, but we moved around a lot. I want to say my mom told me one time that we moved like 14 times by the time I was in 5th grade, constantly moving, new apartments, new cities, new schools. It was just wherever we could find a basement like to live in, or a trailer that we could afford, or an apartment that was low cost or something like that. And so I was constantly the new kid, never had stability. But we always had love. And my mom has always loved me unconditionally. She has always loved me no matter what. She still does. And I think that, what I did have, even though I didn't have stability and money and, friends and, a father figure. I mean, I had lots of father figures, but not like a dad until more of like till I was 10 years old. I had unconditional love. I always felt loved by both my mom and the people around us. But what I've realized in recent years is that what AJ and I have in common is a lot of trauma, a lot of challenges, a lot of conflict that we experienced when we were younger. Her family had a horrific car accident when she was 7 years old, babe?
7.
Yeah, she was 7. Then her mom died when she was 15. Her dad got remarried. That marriage fell apart. There was a whole bunch of stuff that was going on there. And so even though she was in one place, she had a lot of trauma. And then I was just moving around constantly, was sort of became my way of life. And one of the things I learned recently is that I think when chaos comes, AJ's approach to chaos is to organize and gather and kind of put together. And at some point in my life, I endured so much chaos that I just said, my approach was to let it go. Whatever happens is fine. It's out of my control. And we have that, the fact that we both came up in a lot of chaos and trauma is something we have in common, but our approaches to dealing with it are very different. And that creates some conflict in our marriage, because my philosophy is, who cares? It'll work itself out. Like, whatever, give it to God. Let's just do the best we can do. And I think that's different. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think that's pretty different from AJ's. And so when she said earlier, she's cleaning up messes, she gets in and has different response. So there's been, some learning lessons there for the two of us.
Yeah, you definitely have to learn how to navigate those issues and that difference in what you each brought to the relationship. And we'll talk a little bit more we'll get in a little bit more to conflict in just a few minutes here. But I think Matthew,
the difficult stuff is coming, babe. Get ready. That's what I hear.
Hold on.
These are just the warm up. These are the warm up questions.
No, so we feel, we shared with you all, we have kind of 13 pillars, the lens that we look at relationships through, and 13 key elements that are present in all successful relationships. And then we kind of winnow those down to what we call the 3 C's. And those 3 C's are the foundational, or you could say the cornerstones of a relationship. And the first one of those 3 C's is commitment. And we feel pretty certain that with a strong commitment, you can really get through anything. But without that, it's pretty tough. So what I'd love to hear, AJ, maybe you could start for us, is tell me what commitment looks like in your relationship with Rory.
I mean, I think from the get-go, it's like when we made our vows and when we said our vows, I told Rory, I said, I just want to make sure that you're really sure. Because when we say I do, I'm not ever going to say I don't. So I need to be very sure that you're in this to win it, because there's no turning back. And I think in general for us, I think that the choices that we made before we were married were already the sign of commitment that we were going to make this work, of getting debt free. And even though neither of us were virgins when we met, we were abstinent with each other for the 2.5 years leading up to our marriage. And so it's like we made some very, very decided choices to go, whatever was is in the past. And we are starting anew with this relationship because we're going to make it the way that God intended. And that's where we center this relationship, is in God. And so it's like getting debt free and staying abstinent and making that commitment before God. I don't care if anyone else was there, but it was a commitment that we made. Sure. And I think through thick and thin since then, 11 years in, there's been plenty of peaks and valleys and lots of chaos and lots of goodness. But I think the most important thing across all of this is that at the end of the day, it's like he knows I'm not going anywhere and I know that he's not going anywhere. And so although we've definitely had rough patches and difficult conversations that last days or weeks or sometimes months, it's like at the end of the day, it's like we're not going anywhere.
Sure.
So it's rather we figure it out or we're going to be miserable in the meantime.
That's great. Well, two things I heard you say, and one is that it's a real sign of maturity, and you guys definitely had that before you got married, is you had those tough conversations before you got married and said, how, we got to agree on some standards here. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're not going to do. And you kind of laid the groundwork, and that's a huge sign of maturity and also a sign of success in a relationship is when you get agreement, because you're bringing both those family of origin, those histories that are different, and going, all right, how do we see it? What's important to you? What's important to me? What's important to us? So I loved hearing that, because to anybody that's out there that's listening that's not, maybe they're in a relationship but not married yet, having those tough conversations, how would we handle things? How are we going to approach these things? And kind of getting those ground rules, that's huge. And I love to hear that. And the other thing is that you're saying, hey, I want to make sure that when we say I do, we're not going back. And we're committed to this. And a strong commitment, I kind of liken it to a trapeze artist, right? If you got a net when you're rehearsing and you're a trapeze artist, you don't mind messing up because you know you're going to fall and be safe and get up there and do it again. And with strong commitment, that gives you that safety net. And I'm love to hear that. And so, Rory, what about you? What does commitment look like to you in your relationship?
Well, AJ hit a lot of the things that I would have said, related to the abstinence decision. I'll say, everybody has different philosophies on this, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that I feel pretty convicted about is sex overshadows everything else that is there, or it clouds a lot of what is there. And if you take sex out of the equation, it really forces you to know somebody and really determine. I saw a thing recently that said, if you take sex out of the equation, many people don't have much to offer. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes that's true, but we can't see it because we're physically bound or physically committed to someone. And I think that was one of the most, if not the single most significant decision that we made leading up, because it was, that we really, taking this serious. We're really evaluating for this long term. It also is a sign of confidence to go, look, if we can be committed to sexual purity before we're married and we're not having sex, it's really confidence inspiring to go, once we are married and having sex, the idea of sexual temptation then is even less. We've already demonstrated a commitment to the other person physically, even in the absence of sex. And so I think that's just a really big decision that I wish somebody would have told me about. When I was growing up, I grew up in a pretty, volatile environment, you would say, socially, and didn't go to the best schools and learned a lot about life on the playground and from older kids. And I literally thought the goal was to have sex as young as possible, as much as possible, with as many different people as possible. Like, in the absence of a father or someone else to instruct me differently, that was what the world taught me. And that was the road that, I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. So that, I think, is something I wish somebody would have told me, is to say, just take sex out of the equation and see if you still like the person. Let alone go and do you want to spend a lifetime with the person? The other thing that I would say, which is a fairly rare blessing that AJ and I have had the entire time we've known each other, is we were business partners before we were boyfriend and girlfriend. We have always had a working relationship. We met because we knew somebody. We had a mutual friend that we started our first company with, and we started the business together. We were both dating other people at the time, significant others at the time. And I have always loved getting the opportunity. Like some people say, oh, I can't imagine working with my spouse. That sounds horrible. Like the reason I go to work is to get away from my spouse. Different things for different people. But on your question here specifically, it's powerful for me to look at AJ's life and go, she's been through so many difficult things and she kept going. She's had so many times where she could have quit, but she didn't. Personally and professionally, she and getting to watch her conquer in a professional world, one challenge after another, one problem after another, one setback after another, one defeat, people undermining her, underestimating her, stacking the odds against her, and to watch her break them down, work through them, conquer them, move past them, persevere in a professional setting is a really delight and beautiful thing that I get the pleasure of seeing her operate in that capacity and knowing, this woman she's a figure it outer. She's a conqueror. She's a faithful woman. She's a perseverer. She's a fighter. She's a winner. And again, getting that insight into her character before we were married, gosh, it sure made it confidence inspiring to go, this is a woman who's going to stick it out with me. And, I knew enough about myself to know it's no paradise to be married to Rory Vaden. So I knew it needed somebody that would have some of those characteristics. And so I love that about her.
It sounds like those qualities were a real attraction for you to her.
Yeah. I mean, she's really hot. So that was, an obvious first attraction, but interestingly enough, I would wrap all those up, not as perseverance or willpower, or even commitment. I would wrap those all up under the characteristic of faithfulness. She is faithful. If anyone has had a reason to turn their back on God, it's AJ. She's got a lot of chances she could have done that. And so she is faithful in that relationship, which is the most important relationship in her life and should be. And seeing her faithfulness expressed towards God is demonstration of what her faithfulness would be to me, and also a predictor of what her faithfulness would be to our children, and also a foreshadowing of what her faithfulness would be to a company and challenges. And, that one I also got to see in advance of marrying her. And she lives that out every day.
That's beautiful.
Wow, I must have been really good here lately to get such kind words.
He's pouring in. I love it, Rory. And that is so nice. And AJ, I can see you glowing, and I can see the smile in Rory's face that he has as he genuinely says those things. What a great love story. And Rory, you just demonstrated it's not. You're probably familiar with the passage of the scripture that says faithful in the little things, right? Faithful over the great things. But your example in your love story with your bride says you saw how faithful she was in the greatest of things, and therefore knew she could be faithful in everything else. And so that's a great example. Most people don't have that benefit of learning that lesson before they jump in and have that commitment. Yeah. And so kudos.
Yeah, well, just on the topic of scripture for a second, right? I think it's Proverbs 3-5, maybe. A virtuous woman who can find her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, and he will have no lack of gain. And I go, a virtuous woman, hard to find, the heart of her husband safely trusts her. And when I look at my life, I go, my life has not been anything short of gain. Like from where I grew up and the life that I had as a kid to the life that I have now, a word that you could use to describe it would be extraordinary gain. And it is evidence of God's worth spoken becoming true through AJ.
Yeah, that's a great unfoldment. I would love to go to our second of the 3 C's, which is communication.
Here come the difficult ones, babe.
Yeah, here they come. 2 and 3. Well, so I think you're in the thick of it now, right? You're both busy with your business, your travel, you have 2 very young children. And so I'm curious, how do you spend time communicating with each other? How do you make time to communicate? What does that look like in your relationship?
Well, it turns out we're still learning how to do that. Turns out. But I think for the most part, we did not have good boundaries in our former company. It was work all day, work all night, work all weekend, and then figure out when you can work some more. And so when we had our first son, Jasper, who's now 4.5, immediately it forced us to create some new boundaries. And then we exited that business, got pregnant with our second child, Liam. And it's just now, really, in the last 2 years of our marriage, have we actually been very strict and intentional about what is personal time, what is Rory and AJ time, what is Rory time, what is AJ time, and then what is family time. And those things really didn't exist before. It was work all the time. And then everything else will figure itself out later. And it wasn't working very well in terms of having dedicated time to actually communicate. And it was always troubleshooting work problems. And it wasn't really into our kids. And our kids have really been the conduit for helping us be better communicators, because it forces us to have time to talk about how do we communicate with them. And then let's also talk about how do we better communicate with each other. And I would say even more recent than that, just this year, we've both made personal decisions that we've never made before. It's like I reached out and got a therapist for the first time ever. And then I reached out and doubled down and also got a life coach, because I was like, I see myself reverting back to behaviors of my past, of working past 5:30, trying to sneak work in on the weekends, prioritizing work over myself or over other things that are important to me. And as I caught myself doing that, I said, I am falling back into this pattern of a person that I don't want to be anymore. I want to be someone who makes time to have real conversations and has the space to do that. Not, I don't have time for this. We're just going to have to work it out and push it down and we'll figure it out later. And so I think it wasn't really until this year, just in the last few months, with the help of a therapist and a life coach, of going, how do I communicate and why do I communicate the way that I do? And Rory's done the same thing. And I think for the first time, really, we're actually figuring out how to communicate with each other in a way that we're not just doing it that's one-sided, that works for one person, but we're intentional truly for the first time about trying to understand how what our words say, how those impact the other person, even if it was intended in a positive manner on one half, but the way that it can be so differently interpreted by the other person. And so I would say we're 11 years married, 14 years together. And just now, right now, are we truly figuring out how to have a real effective communication? So I would say we are very much still learning. And it hasn't been until our kids was the first, accelerant, then getting a therapist, then getting a life coach. And all of those things have been necessary for us to slow down, take the time, take a pause and go, why does that bother me? Or how can I say this differently? Or where do we create the right space to have these conversations? So honestly, it's a really new thing for a somewhat veteran married couple.
When it comes to creating a kick-ass marriage, do you ever wonder what you could be doing better? Have you ever thought how helpful it would be to be a part of a like-minded community of other imperfect couples who want to level up in their number one relationship? Come visit Kickass Couples Nation, where you can talk with people just like you who are looking for ways to invest in and increase their joy, commitment, and fulfillment in their most important human relationship. You'll have access to a team of licensed marriage therapists, coaches, articles, podcasts, live webinars, and more. Just visit MatthewPHoffman.com so you can learn more about a community that's ready to help you level up. That's MatthewPHoffman.com so you can become of the growing Kick-Ass Couples Nation right now.
I love that you're sharing that with our listeners, that you're really trying to prioritize your relationship, right? And you're trying to learn how to communicate better and to create space to do that, safe space to do that. So I feel like after 27 years of marriage, we are still doing that. I think we waited way too long to figure that out. And that's why we're doing this. That's why we're here sharing, because, you know, into it 2 years, you can use these tools and you can have all these great things to be able to have a successful marriage. So thank you for sharing that. How about you, Rory? How would you say, what would you like to share about communication?
That I am the best communicator and I never make miscommunications or mistakes.
A perfect
I
communicator.
also am never wrong. I am always right.
Yeah. Wait, I got to lift my feet off the ground, Rory. Oh, there's some stuff seeping up here. Hold on. All right, I'm safe. I'm clear.
Everything AJ said, again, I'll tell you the biggest blind spot that I had in my communication that has only been revealed to me. You know, I'm a big personal development junkie. I think we both are. That's one of the things that we both love doing. We love learning, and you know, we also love obviously teaching. It's been we've now had 2 businesses together doing that, and basically, you know, teaching personal development. But you know, I read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus when I was very young. I've read several books on it. AJ used to teach a program called Selling to the Sexes, which was about the differences between men and women. And one of the things that, you know, a lot of that literature talks about is how men have this common tendency to fix a woman's problems. Like she comes and says, you know, she has this problem or frustration, and the man wants to immediately go to, well, you know, what you should do is this, like, this is what, you know, and we talk like if we were talking to a man to man, the reason we share our frustration is because we're looking for an answer. But if a woman is sharing her frustration, she's looking for support. She's not looking for an answer. And so I've always been aware of like, oh, like, don't fix problems. Don't tell her like this is what she should do. And I've always been very deliberate and intentional about not doing that or trying not to do that. Well, as a result of that, I was convinced that I never did that as a husband. And I, looking back, realized I actually don't think I ever did that. I think I did something much worse. Rather than trying to fix her problems, I started trying to convince her that she should feel differently about the problems she has than she does. And it's way worse. I would try to say, well, you know, you shouldn't feel that way about this thing because of this and this. And you shouldn't feel that way about this person because really they this and this. And rather than trying to like offer her solutions, I was trying to offer her like an alternative, you know, like that she was wrong for seeing it a certain way, which is way worse. There's a phrase that some people would use for this, which I didn't even know what this phrase meant, which is gaslighting. And I was one gaslighting SOB. Like I was doing it all the time, and I not because I was trying to be harmful. I was trying to be helpful. I wasn't trying to make her feel horrible. I was trying to make her feel supported, and to say, hey, there's another way of looking at this. But it was the opposite. It was not making her feel supported. It was making her feel wrong. And it was terrible. And that was a massive blind spot that I had because I was so cautious of not trying to fix her problems. Like, hey, you should do this and this and this. And I ended up doing something much, much worse. And that's been a mess. You know, that's been a negative trigger and behavior that I was just completely unaware that I was engaging in. So I would say that has been that's the thing that jumps out to me about communication. Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing I'm so committed.
That's right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, Rory. And that's been a lesson that I have 2 older sisters. I'm the baby boy, and they're both incredibly intelligent. And the conversations get interesting when the 3 of us are with my dad. And my sister told me not too long ago, and I learned the hard lesson of everybody has the right to feel the way that they feel. Period. And you can't say, hey, you can't feel that way. I didn't know that either. That was a lesson that I learned not too long ago. So when someone says they feel a certain way, it's an opportunity for you to seek understanding. And that's being a detective and asking the questions. And so I appreciate you sharing that. That's something that I didn't know much about until the last few years. And it's a constant effort to keep working and strengthening. And it's the fact that you're aware of it and working on it is great. And that kind of leads a little bit to our third.
And it only took me like 14 years to figure it out. So I'm a fast learner, very fast.
Fast in many, slow in others, right? Yeah.
Yes.
If we could only pick what we knew and make sure it was the right stuff. So that is funny because it leads into our third C, which is conflict resolution. And so, Rory, I'm going to ask, so obviously things come up. You guys have disagreements. Things don't work out. You say X, she says Y. When conflict does arise in your relationship, how have you guys done the dance and figured out how to work through that or handle it so you keep that commitment and you keep that joy? And what are your thoughts on that?
You're making me go first on this one?
Yeah, I am. I know you want to be all polite for your bride up there.
I'm so curious.
Well, one thing I would say, this is a true observation, which I am grateful for, is that I honestly don't remember a time where AJ and I have really had a fight about something personal. It's always about business. And ironically, we see the world very differently. And we have so many things in common, and there's a lot of things we're completely in lockstep on. But then there's some things where it's like, I would make a very different decision than she would make. And I'm grateful that we have sort of the sandbox of a business to hash that stuff out in and deal with, because I think it helps us to communicate better in our personal life. But I mean, if you're asking what we've done that has worked, that's a different question than what should we be doing or what should be done that we have learned. If you're asking me what we have done that has worked, one really technical thing that I think we've done here and there, which is kind of weird because it seems a little bit righteous, but I feel like it has helped, is that when we feel ourselves going into a discussion, we turn on the recorder on the phone. We actually record the conversation. And it's weird because we've never, that I can recall, actually gone back and listened to the recording and actually been like, no, see, you did say this. No, you did say that. But there was something kind of powerful about the idea of going, okay, everything that I say from this point forward is actually going to be recorded. And there is something about that to me at least feels like I actually am going to be very deliberate about what I say, because the proof can and could be used against me. And having that somehow helps. And even though I don't think we've ever gone back and listened to it, I actually think it could be a really good exercise to go back and do it, not to prove like, oh, I'm right or you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, but as an educational piece, the same way that you would coach a presenter on their presentation or a salesperson on their sales talk, to go right here, pause, right here when you said that, it made me feel this way. And to be able to, oh, that's so educational for me. I didn't realize that when I said that thing, it made you feel that way. When I said that thing, I thought it would make you feel this way, or I was trying to make you feel this way. I wasn't aware that when I said that, it made you feel this way. And so I actually think it, could be healthy, but I think most of the power is just going, okay, we're now going on record, and it forces you to have an extra level of care, the proper level of care that you should have, because otherwise it's easy to just kind of just let your emotions puke out and wrap the words that you're saying and then go, you're overreacting. I didn't say that like that. When you have this objective judge, which is the recording that you both would have to answer to. I don't know. So that's the first thing that came to mind.
No, that's helpful.
I think I'm going to steal it, actually.
Yeah, it's like, well, if you're an archer, right? Once you fire the arrow, you can't go, I think I want that back. It's gone, and head it to the target, right? And it sounds like what you're saying, Rory, is that you do that. You guys haven't had to use it, but it makes sure that you're aware and you're on point, so that what you're saying is loving, is succinct, and thoughtful, as opposed to the lower base elements that sometimes want to take over about, blaming and shifting and accusing. Because if it's the person you love sitting across from you when you're talking, you don't want to do anything that's going to hurt that person because your commitment and you love them. And so it sounds like it makes you be more deliberate. And I love that. Thank you. And how about you, AJ? Since you get to go second on this, what would you add about conflict resolution, or how have you seen that play out in your relationship with Rory?
Yeah, I would say there's two things. And I have grown to become aware that at times I apparently can have a very distinct tone in my in my voice that I'm unaware of sometimes. And so one of the things that we put this in place years ago is it would happen so often. And Rory would take it as I'm getting heated, and me, I'm going, I'm just passionate about this. But apparently my tone was coming across the wrong way. And so we started this whole thing. It's every single time that I started getting the tone that would typically elevate into some sort of disagreement, he would just say, yellow card, yellow card. And it was it was something we talked about and we agreed on. And I was like, okay, that's neutral enough that if you say that, then I can be like, okay, do I have a tone right now? And for whatever reason, it does help. And it just helps me de-escalate my tone because I'm not even aware that I have it. And so finding this neutral ground of when this happens, here's what I'm going to do so that you're aware, because a lot of it is just about awareness. And so that was one little thing. But I think the most impactful thing that we've ever done in our entire relationship to improve our communication when it comes to conflict resolution is the setting. And here's what I mean by that. Rory mentioned that I would say 99% of miscommunication, disagreements, conflict, arguments, anything of that sort, 99% are work related. Only 1% are truly personal issues with our house or our family, our kids, or whatever. It's like 99% are work related. And so we started doing Monday meetings. Rory and I have a Monday meeting for our business every Monday. It's 3 hours. We usually do it from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And we realize is these cannot be in an office setting. These cannot be in our house. We need to get out and we need to be in nature. We need to do it into the woods. And so we do them on a hike. And it's like the moment that I feel myself getting frustrated or annoyed or heated, I just start walking faster. And it's like I'll burn off that energy through physical movement. Or, it's like I actually look around and I'm overwhelmed, truly overwhelmed by nature. And it's like, why am I even frustrated by this? This is nonsense. Because we're out there in this beautiful, serene environment with trees and a lake. And it's just this great reminder of we're so small. Like these problems are so insignificant to be out in the wide open wilderness.
Sure.
And then to that, it's like it creates a different atmosphere for both of us. It's like we're in a different headspace. We're physically moving, so we're burning that energy. So instead of just sitting there and letting it all build up in our bodies, we're actually exerting it out in movement. And then there's just the power of being out in nature, of just being reminded everywhere you look that you are small and this is a finite life you have, and these problems you have are insignificant. And it just puts it in perspective, which is quite honestly what we need 100% of the time.
Sure.
Whenever we have conflict.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really grounding. And that's another
it totally
way.
Is.
That goes back to communication, right? You learn how to communicate in that space.
Yeah. So it's been, I think to me, that's been the number one
great example
thing that we have done that has really matured and lessened the amount of heated conversations that we have. It's been a game changer for me to go, no, our meetings don't happen in an office. They happen on a hike.
Love it.
Great for a lot of reasons. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Right. in addition to the 3 C's that we just talked about, we have 10 more pillars. And do you each have the list of pillars with you? Perfect.
I do.
Awesome. So AJ, I'm going to ask you first. Of those pillars, is there one that stands out to you that really resonates with you that you'd like to tell us about?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm just going to have to go because this is one of the reasons that I fell in love with Rory in the first place is the faith and moral code. I told Rory a very quick story. When Rory and I first met, we both had significant others. We started the business together. It was almost 2 years into the business where we both find ourselves single for the first time. Both exited long-term relationships in our early 20s. And I'm on a first date, literally on a first date. And I find out that Rory is single, and it's at a Valentine's Day charity event that he happened to come to. And we say this all the time. It was like love at second sight. It's like the moment that I knew that he was single and I was single, it was love at second sight. And I looked over at my date and I said, I'm so sorry. This is our last date. I'm going to have to go now. And it's because I knew that I wanted a man that put God first, even ahead of me. I wanted someone that was respectful and who was truly dignified in terms of his own self-respect. And there was and is a deep moral code of following through what you say you're going to do, is what, how we would define integrity. But even more of that, it's doing the right thing because people matter. And it's, I know Rory does not lie. He lied one time about being late and felt so guilty. He called me back and said, I just lied and I don't know why. And I'm pretty sure he's never done it ever again. It's like, I know that when my man says something, it's true. I know that, even if I don't like it, he's still going to tell me. And there's a deep moral code that is truly based in faith and in scripture and of trying to be a man after God's heart. And I knew that from the moment I met him. And that's why as soon as I knew that he was single and I was single, I was like, sayonara, anyone else in the world, this is the man for me. And it's like one of those things where it's like, I had dated enough to know that's not common. That's not common for someone else to want to be virtuous and to want to help you be virtuous. And that was, to me, it was the first man in my life where it was like, this is a man who I have not met anyone else like him in my life. And so if I haven't met anyone else like him so far, I'm going to snatch him up and I'm never going to let him go. And I felt that way. I felt that way from the get-go.
Victoria, she won.
She did. I love hearing that little snippet of your love story. I think that's really really sweet. How about you, Rory? Is there one pillar there that stands out to you that really is foundational for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love these pillars. There's a lot of really great ones on here. I'm just going to pick another one that I think I've sucked at, that in hopes of that, somebody else will learn faster than I did. And I think it's the pillar of selflessness. I sucked at selflessness for a huge part of my life. It's interesting because there is a biblical term that is called sanctification, which means the gradual cleansing. And I think my spiritual walk very much represents sanctification. So, for me, the acceptance of Jesus, paying the price for my sin wasn't the end of my faith. It was the beginning. And that marked a beginning of a journey of sanctification. And I think mostly what I have been sanctified of is self-centeredness. And it points back to growing up poor, being made fun of, in school. All we could afford was sweatpants. I had sweatpants and a shaved head, never had the nice shoes. I was a nerd, and also I was always the new kid. So I never fit in. I never was around long enough somewhere to fit in. And when I got there, I didn't fit in. And then I'd move somewhere else and I was new and I didn't fit in. And so so much of my life I didn't fit in. And I think my response to that was, well, I'll show you. Like, I will achieve, I will conquer, I will become somebody. Like, I will show you that I was worth it. And I think that starts with my biological father going, well, I'm going to show you what you missed out on by choosing not to be in my life. So I think that was where my desire to achieve came from. And so I did that. I just, knocked down one goal after the next. I was a black belt at 10 years old. I was an All-American basketball player. I was valedictorian. I got a full ride scholarship. I joined direct sales. I was the number one person in the history of a 150-year-old company. I had a world championship of public speaking, started a business, met AJ. And then it was like, we grew this great company. And then, there was something about, when I married AJ, it really opened my eyes for the first time to how self-centered I was. That in the defense mechanism of going, I don't fit in, I'll show you, I'll succeed, I became self-centered, and that became my modality of operating. And I honestly never thought I would be married. I never thought I would be married. I just never, it was never part of my vision. And then I met her, things changed. And then when we moved in together, it was like, whoa, this is totally different. Like, I am making decisions not for me, but for us. Like, I have to factor every decision, what I watch, what I eat, how I spend my time, what I wear, where I sleep, where I travel. Like, everything had to be filtered through this lens of how it affects another person. That was radical for me, especially growing up without any deep friends and stuff like that. I was a loner. I've been a loner my whole life. And then, I met another in my wolf pack. And it was a game changer. But I think in some ways, AJ was already a high achiever, but then I helped sucked her in even more to achievement. And we just ran together, and we ran hard, and we just conquered together. And then we had kids, and it was like, it blew, like, it just was like, whoa, we can't keep this pace. And I am realizing even more how self-centered I am by having kids and being like, this is crazy. They need me at every moment. And I'd never been needed like on a minute by minute basis by someone else. I had the indulgence of operating completely isolated. And kids have changed me more than like anything else worldly, of help just kind of die to myself and give up some pursuits and give up some goals and say, I'm going to lay those down in choice of, I want to be known by my kids, and I want to be there, and I want to be a good husband. And so that's another one that I sucked at for a long time.
So powerful. Thank you so much for opening up about that, because I know there are a lot of listeners out there who have been through and experienced a lot of that same thing. And just appreciate you being vulnerable in that way.
Appreciate you sharing that. And it's huge. And it sounds like you self-identified, and you're able to work through it. Someone told me this once, and that you never know how much your parents or parent loved you until you have your own kids, because you just can't fathom that. And then when you have them, you're like, shoot, my parents did that for me, and they did that, and they're always on, and it's always right. You go, holy cow. And it changes you, because it does change your priorities. And, prioritization is critical, especially in this number one human relationship. So we appreciate you sharing that. It's powerful, and it definitely is the truth. And we're going to kind of come to our last question here. And AJ, we can start with you on this. And if there was one piece of advice, you could go back to your unmarried self, put your hands on your shoulders, and go, hey, before you get married, there's one thing I want you to know. What would that one piece of advice be to your unmarried self, AJ?
That just because the marriage that you will have in 10 years doesn't look like the one you'll have in year one doesn't mean anything's wrong. And I think that's really important. I think as a newlywed, I just expected like, oh, it's always going to be like this, right? And then you realize, like, oh, okay, well, at some point it's like you grow and evolve and life gets fuller and busier and you add people to it or people leave. And I think a lot of the people I know in my life who have struggles in their marriage, it's because they're comparing it to a marriage of the past instead of just focusing on the marriage of today. And marriage changes because people change. And the marriage is just a union of two people, and people change. Interests change, and people come and go. And I think a lot of times, for all of my girlfriends, I'm in my late 30s, and there's plenty of distress in marriages in and around our friendships and family. And it really comes down to comparing it to something that was versus just working on what is, and thinking that because it's different, that somehow it's not good anymore. And so I wish I would have just known then. It's like, your marriage will have seasons of life, and that's okay. And your marriage will change, and that's okay too. But to embrace it and to seek it and to evolve and change as your partner changes so that you guys can change together, I think would have been really helpful of just going as you expand your family, or as work changes, or as you move, or as just seasons of life occur. No, your marriage will change with them.
Right.
And that doesn't mean anything is wrong with your marriage. It's just a sign of growth and change.
Sure.
How about you, Rory, if you had to put your hands on your unmarried self and say, this is what you should know going into this, what would it be?
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind for me is actually a piece of advice that I heard from somebody else, and I don't know who, but it's fairly popular. But it's the idea of just chase God first, and it's this concept of a triangle, that if you're both moving towards God, like if you're both chasing God, then you're coming closer together, and it's easier for you both to pursue God and come closer together even than to pursue each other. And I just, man, the older I get, the more my eyes are open to life is so freaking difficult. It's so hard. People die. Like, you have, COVID, you have, money issues. You've got all of these different challenges and things that you have to be, doing and taking care of. And then you have kids come into the conversation, and it's difficult, and you have to die to yourself, and then you have to manage kids, and gosh, other people's marriages fall apart all around you. And then your kids change and they're going through stuff. And it's so hard. And I just don't know what else you could put your trust in this world that can pull you through all that. Like, if there's something else, it's like, I haven't found it. Like, God's the only steady thing that works and pulls you through everything. And so I would anchor down and double down on the advice that somebody gave us, which is just chase God first.
Sure.
I love that. I think that's great advice. And I love how you said it pulls you together, right? You're both chasing God, and so you're coming together in doing that. Thank you for sharing that with me, because I know that that's something I'm going to think about a little bit more.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, we're so grateful to have had the time with you all today. I know that you have plenty of demands, family, professional, pulling on you in all kinds of directions, but we really enjoyed the takeaways and the pearls. We know our listeners will too. And if people want to find out more about you, your companies, where you are and what you're doing, tell our listeners where they should go.
Rory?
Yeah. So I would say, one place you could go is to just go to brainbuildersgroup.com. That's our company. We help mission-driven messengers build and monetize their personal brand, reach more people, make a bigger impact, and make more money. And you can check that out. We have a national research study about the future and trends of personal branding that AJ has basically spent the better part of a year of her life dedicated to professionally, that is just coming out. So I think you want to go grab that and see it. It's got far-reaching impacts. So that's what I would say.
Great.
Well, best of luck to both of you. Thank you for showing up today, for opening up, and for giving our listeners some really great pearls and an insight into your relationship as well.
Love getting to know both of you a little bit more and hearing the backstory. We see the results and this beautiful family with these gorgeous boys and a thriving business, but it's great to hear the foundation and the agreements that brought you to where you are today. And no doubt you're going to continue to be kick-ass. So thank you. And until we come across you guys again, we look forward to the next opportunity.
Take care, guys.
Thanks a lot.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.